Well, hello, and welcome to Dr. White's English classes. And today we're talking about The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. Fantastic book. I always enjoy reading it, and I like reading this with my ninth grade classes when I have an opportunity to teach it to the ninth grade students. And the book starts off by saying he was an old man who fished alone in a skiff in the Gulf Stream, and he had gone 84 days now without taking a fish. And that's how the story begins. So we see this older man, and he's been fishing for a long time, but now that he's an older person, he's not fishing as well, and he's not catching fish as often as he used to. And he has this young boy who's like a good friend to him, who helps him out periodically. But the little boy's family no longer wants him to go fishing with the old man. So the old man sets out on his own to catch this big marlin, this big fish that's going to settle it all for him and help him to be able to have money to live off of, to do the things he needs to do, and help him to live out the rest of his life with the money from this marlin. So we see the old man on this massive journey by himself, and we see what he goes through. We also see him constantly having these dreams about the lions, and this is a reference to or symbol of his youth, him as a younger person. And then he comes out of the dreams and he's back, he's still the older man. But when he's out fishing by himself and he's trying to set everything up to catch the marlin, we see him having to use every bit of his body to pull this fish in, and he wraps the rope around his back and over his hands, and he's pulling the rope in. And as he's pulling it in, you begin to see the blood on his hands, and his hands are bloody and they're hurting. And so we get a lot of symbolism in this book too of Christ, especially when he has the marlin on the mast and he's lifting the mast up. That's a representation of Christ on the cross. And there's some other elements of that in that story as well. But it's a great story. And so we see him in trying to catch this marlin and also to, try and change his life. But then ultimately he does catch the marlin, but, things don't go as planned. So he comes back home, and the marlin's on the skiff, on his boat, on the mast, but it's just the skeleton of the marlin. And he goes back home and he's so tired. The young man sees him, the little boy sees him, and he goes to talk with him. And the man explains about his journey. But the young boy sees his hands and all that he went through, and he begins to cry for the old man. But he also wants to know what can he do for the old man, so he tries to get coffee for him. And it ends really with the two of them talking and the old man falling back to sleep and dreaming about catching the lions. So that's how the story ends. So it's an interesting book. There's a lot of symbolism in it. It's a novella, and a novella is a book that's not short enough to be a short story, but it's not quite as long to be a novel. So it's called a novella, Novella. And Ernest Hemingway wrote this book in the latter part of his life, and he too enjoyed fishing on his fishing boat with his two sons. And so we also see a lot of Ernest Hemingway in the story as well, as you get to know more about Ernest Hemingway as a writer too. So it's a great read. If you get a chance, read The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. A fantastic book. Until next time, keep reading.